Sarah had always been a creature of habit. She liked her routines, her quiet evenings with a book, and her predictable life. It was supposed to be a simple night out with friends, a rare deviation from her usual plans. They had dinner at a new restaurant, shared some laughs, and then went their separate ways. Sarah decided to take a shortcut home through an alley she had never noticed before. It looked unremarkable, just a narrow passage between two buildings. But as she walked, the air grew colder, the light dimmer, and the sound of her footsteps echoed unnaturally. She felt a shiver run down her spine and turned to go back, but the entrance had disappeared. In its place was a blank wall. Panic set in as she realized she was trapped. She pressed her hands against the cold, damp brick, her breath quickening. "This can't be happening," she whispered to herself. Sarah decided to move forward, hoping to find another exit. The alley led to a corridor that stretched endlessly in both directions. The walls were a sickly shade of yellow, and the fluorescent lights flickered erratically. She chose a direction and started walking, her footsteps echoing loudly. The air was thick, and she felt a sense of unease growing within her. Minutes turned into hours, or so it seemed. There were no windows, no doors, just the never-ending hallway. She tried to call for help, but her phone had no signal. She screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the oppressive silence. It was as if the space itself was absorbing her cries. The corridor began to play tricks on her mind. She would see a figure out of the corner of her eye, but when she turned, there was nothing there. The walls seemed to shift and pulse, narrowing and then expanding as if they were alive. She could hear faint whispers, indistinct and haunting, as if the walls were sharing secrets meant only for her. "Help me," she murmured, her voice trembling. As she wandered deeper into the labyrinth, she found herself in a series of rooms connected by more hallways. Each room was different, yet all were eerily familiar. One was a replica of her childhood bedroom, complete with her old teddy bear. Another was a kitchen that looked like it belonged in her grandmother's house. She touched the table, feeling the grain of the wood beneath her fingers, the familiarity almost comforting if not for the unsettling atmosphere. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. She could make out words now. "Sarah, join us. Stay." The voices seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. She covered her ears, but it was no use. The voices were inside her head. Desperation clawed at her sanity. She needed to find a way out. She stumbled upon a mirror in one of the rooms. Her reflection stared back at her, but something was off. The reflection's eyes were wide with terror, and its mouth moved independently of her own. "You're not real," she told herself, but the reflection smirked and said, "Neither are you." She smashed the mirror in a fit of rage and fear, but the shards on the floor reflected countless versions of herself, each one twisted and distorted. She ran out of the room, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The hallway seemed narrower now, the ceiling lower. Her thoughts grew fragmented. How long had she been here? Hours, days. Time had lost all meaning. Hunger and thirst gnawed at her, but the fear was more consuming. She knew she couldn't stay in one place for too long. The space didn't want her to. It was guiding her, pushing her toward something. She entered a room that was pitch black, the darkness so thick it was tangible. She fumbled for a light switch but found none. The door slammed shut behind her, and she was plunged into total darkness. The whispers were deafening now, overlapping and chaotic. She could feel something moving in the darkness, brushing against her skin, cold and clammy. A soft, malevolent laugh echoed through the room. "You can't escape," it taunted. "You belong to us now." She backed into a corner, hugging herself, trying to make herself small and invisible. But she knew it was futile. The space had her. It had always had her. Suddenly, she felt a sharp pain in her ankle, like a bite. She screamed and kicked out. There was nothing there. The pain spread up her leg, icy and numbing. She fell to the floor, writhing in agony. The darkness seemed to seep into her skin, her mind, consuming her completely. Her vision blurred, and she saw faces in the darkness, twisted and monstrous, yet familiar. They were the faces of those who had been trapped here before, their souls bound to the liminal space. "Join us," they whispered. "Become one with us." She felt her consciousness slipping away, her will to fight fading. The space was absorbing her, making her a part of itself. She was becoming another lost soul in the endless hallways, another voice in the cacophony of whispers. Her last thought before the darkness claimed her completely was of the life she had left behind, the normalcy she had taken for granted. She realized too late that the space had always been there, lurking at the edges of reality, waiting for someone like her to stumble in. And now, it had her. The next morning, her friends would report her missing. The police would search, but they would find no trace of her. The alley would appear as it always had, a dead end with no passage. Sarah would become another unsolved mystery, another person lost to the liminal space that defied explanation. But she wasn't truly gone. She was there, in the echoing hallways, her whispers joining the others, waiting for the next unfortunate soul to find their way in. And the hallways waited, patient and hungry.